Now broadcasting the Dr. Nilda Business Foresight Show, positioning your business with strategies for an extraordinary future. Dr. Nilda features expert guests from diverse backgrounds to bring you their stories and strategies that have helped them reach their success. The diversity in industries gives you that panoramic view from an array of industries. They are innovators, thought leaders, trendsetters, and strategists. Here, Dr. Nilda reveals strategies that will position you to be on the cutting edge and be able to do what you love with the people you like, making the profits you want to live the lifestyle that you have dreamed of. And now, here's your host, Dr. Nilda Perez.
Hello, and welcome back to the Foresight Strategy Show with your host, Dr. Nilda Perez, and co-host Rachel Calderon. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. So today we have a very awesome guest. Prateeska Singh is a CPA turned designer who works at the intersection of design thinking, foresight, ethnography, and systems change. Prateeska freelances under her own creative consultancy called Empathy, where she is in relation to futures work, developing a design fiction-based community engagement practice. She is also completing her M.Des in Strategic Foresight and Innovation at OCAD University in Toronto. And as of January 2018, she was appointed to the board of directors for the Association of Professional Futurists. Welcome, Prateeska. How are you?
Really great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you come from a CPA background, and yet right now you're involved in futures, but not just futures, the design, futures in design. So tell me a little bit about that, how you came to that, and how you put it all together.
I think it's a very circuitous path, as you can imagine, from going to auditor to design and futures. I think it started with this questioning of what are my values, and I have this question that's I look at every day, which is what do I work for? Not who do I work for, but what do I work for? And I think that question has driven my career into uncharted paths that I couldn't have even fathomed myself. And so I was an auditor for many years, and then I immigrated to Canada actually, and started working with startups and a nonprofit that worked with social entrepreneurs. And that got me into understanding systems change theory. Right. And that, just being introduced to systems change theory, opened this world to me that spoke much more to who I was as a person. And then I found out about a graduate program here in Toronto at OCAD University, which is Canada's largest design university, having a graduate program in strategic foresight and innovation. And that program is the culmination of systems change theory with foresight, with design thinking and ethnography. And so that's sort of been the segue into my past to present. And really the audit part, being so process conscious, is so relevant to the work that we do when we're working with clients or initiatives that have to do with foresight. So it's actually melded it itself quite well, just in unexpected ways, but that's life, I think.
Yeah, and that's how it is. Well, my background is social work, and you're like, how does a social worker get involved in business and then in foresight? How does this all come together? And yet it all melds together quite seamlessly. It's almost like this is the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the trajectory of your life, and it was honestly, you were always on that path to where you are today. And I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, and I think maybe both of you can speak to this, but I think our own careers having transitioned so surprisingly emphasizes why multidisciplinary work and multidisciplinary collaborations are so critical, because I see where my accounting plays so deeply with design. I wouldn't have thought of that maybe if I hadn't gone to accounting school or had been trained as an accountant and gone to business school. But my own experiences make me really value and look for really different sort of collaborative environments.
Right. Yes. And yet most people don't do that because they kind of feel like they go to school, this is your degree and this is what you have to do for the rest of your life. It's almost like
for sure.
They don't know how to cross over.
For
you know.
sure.
And not even cross over. I think add to it, because that's pretty much what I've done. It's been
Yes,
additive.
exactly.
It's been like this. It's almost like I feel like I'm in a kitchen, right? And I can't cook a lick, but I
do understand the concept.
I understand the concept, right? And I'm always like adding new ingredients, and so that makes me better at everything that I do, because I bring in this added component to, let's say, to futures, but also when I do therapy, when I do my counseling, I also bring that in. So it just kind of braids together. And that's what I have found. And I think that's the beauty of education and training and being around people. Like, again, you were around people that actually guided you this way. But this was always supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to be. And yet it wasn't something you think about on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought 6 years ago that I'd be working in design and foresight. I don't think those words were really even part of my vocabulary. And I think what you're also talking about, cooking is such a great metaphor and an analogy. And you have to follow your gut as well and your instincts. And what feels right to you may not feel right to someone else. But if you're cooking for yourself, like cooking for yourself. So, you have to sort of see what works for you and add and subtract and mix and match based on that. And I think that's what careers are about. And that's what, foresight is about as well.
Right. So okay, go ahead, Rachel. We're both like, all right, we have all these questions. So go ahead, Rachel. I'm going to let you go next.
Okay. So what is design fiction-based community engagement work? What is that, and how did you get into that?
So I think, when I started working at the nonprofit, which was also a social enterprise, and they worked with social entrepreneurs. Again, like I said, it was about systems change and who's doing amazing work in their community. And the zinger to that is these are entrepreneurs that don't necessarily, from a meritocracy standpoint, define themselves as your traditional entrepreneurs, right? And so I'm working in this like amazing organization that supports all forms of all backgrounds and all forms of education and all forms of life experiences to do great work. And that experience really triggered something in me, which was like, this is the sort of work I want to do. I want to work with a broader cross-section of our society, a broader cross-section of who we engage and live with. And that's what community development work is. The great part about coming to this graduate program and starting to do work in in design fiction and foresight work was finding creative mediums to talk about complex social issues in a way that doesn't detract from complexity, but makes it digestible and makes it able to engage with lots of different age groups, lots of different backgrounds. And so design fiction-based community engagement work is that it's using the principles of foresight, using the principles of design to talk about really complex social issues that impact all of us with a much broader group of people, as opposed to just those that can afford my work from an institutional standpoint.
Okay. Fantastic. So explain to me a little bit about what exactly does your work tackle? Like when you go into an organization or into a company, what exactly do you tackle?
I work on a wide spectrum of issues, but the 3 or 4 that I focus most on are climate reality, because that's human reality.
Right.
I work on gender and feminist praxis. So the process and the inherent principles around feminist thinking and how that's applicable across a wide spectrum of institutional ways of being and working and collaborating. I work on food and healthcare a lot, and those are both tied as well as separate. So those 3 or 4 issues I tend to focus a lot on, and those get us into well-being and social cohesion, and they're relevant to all of us.
Right.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So why do you think immersive design and fiction theater is so powerful? So this is something that you bring in while you're teaching it, all right? While you're working with them, you bring this in. So how is this powerful, and how are they able to see things differently? Because I am assuming that the companies that you go into are novice to the whole foresight, because this is what I have found. Many of the companies that I work, Basically, they trust me, but they don't fully grasp what I'm bringing.
Mhm.
I agree. And I think there's a difference between using foresight to develop R&D or to develop strategy. A lot of my work is about what organizations want to have a broader conversation about. So it's almost looking at what are the values of an organization? What do they stand for? What are they willing to have a conversation about that may not necessarily be about just purely driving sales and dollars from like a selling products and services standpoint. It's about what do we stand for and what do we want to have a broader conversation about in our community. And the immersive design fiction is one element of design fiction. So immersive theater, for example, is a practice that I do in a collaborative environment with 3 or 4 other designers. And we put together an immersive theater installation. It's an interactive installation. We've done it in trade shows, which have a specific audience, to doing it in a public all night long art event show for the city of Toronto last year called Nuit Blanche. We had about 1,000 people come from the public. As you can imagine, it's 1,000 people that probably are very, very different from each other.
Right.
And that immersive theater is so powerful because when you walk into it, they know they're coming into an installation. What people don't realize is as soon as they walk through the doors, they're becoming a participant. And they're purely guided by how they interact with us as actors who are staged, our script to our artifacts. Those could be visual or physical. And you walk in and you're guided and you slowly figure out step by step that, oh, I'm a patient in a clinic. You're being directed to see a doctor, or so it's theatrical, but it's also really nuanced. It's really nerdy and really researched. Every element of this installation is an extrapolation of a trend or a signal or a driver we're seeing. And inherently, it's also an extrapolation of the values that we're seeing. It makes you want to question, are these the values and principles by which we want to live our lives as a society? And to give you an example, the most recent installation we did.
Okay, great. I was just going to ask for an example.
Yeah, I was like, wait, I know, let me make this more tangible. It was a nature deficit disorder clinic in the year 2067. So 50 years from today, a nature deficit disorder clinic.
Okay.
And this clinic treats you for nature deficit disorder. And that's basically as our cities become more concrete and green space becomes less accessible, as our social and socioeconomic inequity and disparity becomes larger. So the wealthier are becoming wealthier and those on the lower spectrum are becoming poorer. And combining that with austerity. So the government maybe can't keep public parks anymore as a free thing. You have to pay, to access public spaces. If those things start to happen and green space doesn't become as accessible for a large subsection of society, what does that mean for our mental health? What does that mean for, equality and equity? And so this clinic says, if you couldn't afford it, that's okay. We will provide this service for you. It's virtual. It's a virtual access to nature. And so it's playing on these things that actually are happening, but we're extrapolating it to 50 years from today. And we tie everything in from mental health to healthcare. What does healthcare delivery look like 50 years from today? How would you feel if it was delivered to you that way? To not take things for granted the way they are, it's that tweak, it's that question, it's that push and pull that we try to explore. And theater is great because it respects all of you. You can walk in as Rachel, you can walk in as Nilda, and your lived experiences, your personal truths stay with you. And in that facilitated discussion at the end, we allow us to all have a conversation that says, why did that impact you a certain way, but not that person? And then we can get deeper into the systemic issues that differentiate our own experiences of our cities, of our services, of our products. And so it's another way to have a much deeper conversation without excluding who you are as a person and your experiences and your assumptions about the future.
Fantastic.
Right. Okay.
So with that said, here's my next question. Sorry, Rachel. Yeah. My next question is, so the intention of the theater is to have and again, nothing beats experience. I don't care how smart you are. You can know something in your mind. You can be, book smart, but yet nothing beats experience. So is the intention of the experience to have these people begin to think of how they can make things better, how they can make change, or is it experience so that they can, again, what is the intention of the theater, and what is the intention of the installation?
Sure. So again, the installation or the immersive theater is just like one type of way that we can do design fiction. But the theater and the experiential component of it is powerful and it's a group experience with people you don't know. So it acts both as this opportunity for like social cohesion. It also triggers us to think about, okay, if this is a possible future, what do I feel about it intellectually, emotionally? So it's also it's an embodied experience, right? We always are incorporating multiple senses in there: sight, sound, hearing, touch. So all of you is part of this. So it is to have you think very critically about a possible future from not just an intellectual standpoint, but also an affective standpoint, you know, and say, okay, what do I really think about this? Why am I triggered? And if I'm not triggered, why am I, you know, like, why that too? And if critically then thinking about what can I do to make myself go towards this future, or what must we do individually or as a society or collectively to bring a different possible future to life. And so there is that, it's a social activist framework.
So this is like a place where they can actually begin to think critically and creatively. And you're helping them through that exercise.
Yeah, because I think most people don't think about 50 years from today. Like, we think about it, we read about AI. If we're nervous, we maybe ignore all that talk about AI. But if we do an immersive theater, and maybe you don't know, or maybe you do know it's theater, and you walk in, you're going to have thoughts and you're going to have perspectives. And that may, and our hope is, will trigger you to act, or to at least be informed by something. Our job also is to inform people and to share what we get to do in our works, in our work, in our research with a lot of people who maybe don't think about it or don't have the opportunity to think about it.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's wonderful.
So Prateeksha, who commissions your work, and why should they commission your work?
So, you know, before I answer that, just to sort of this notion of like design fiction-based community engagement work incorporates like theater and incorporates workshops. I design individually or collaboratively with the other designers, or, you know, working across different sort of art-based practices as well, theater being just one of them. But I've worked collaboratively and individually with, you know, a theater company, with you know, a higher education institution, with a private company, and the next work that's going to be publicly installed is with Canada's National Ceramic Museum, called the Gardner Museum. And I also do work with conferences, you know, different kinds of conferences that are interested in intersectionality and how design can be used to talk about complex issues. And as well as the government, actually. The government in Canada is federally and provincially and municipally is really interested in using design principles to engage with people differently. And so I'm very fortunate to be getting those different opportunities in the government setting as well, who are interested in the work that I do.
Okay. Wonderful.
And anybody can hire me to do this. I think anybody who cares strongly about a social issue and wants to engage differently with people, but doesn't necessarily know themselves how to, we work collaboratively to create something that speaks true to them, but also engages people. And it's not technology only, right? This is like public. This is people talking to each other, people running against each other. This is people walking next to each other in some sort of a lived, embodied experience, you know?
Right. So these are not scripts. So they're not given a script to do. They're being themselves in this live theater.
Yeah, in the theater, they don't even maybe know they're walking into an immersive theater. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. In other workshops, it's about drawing something. It's about using personification. It's about speaking, you know, writing a story from a third person perspective that allows people to no longer be so self-critical. It allows them to talk about their weaknesses, you know, from the perspective of a clay pot in their kitchen. You know, they can talk about the relationship with food in a way that's really like honest. But if it was maybe you want to be more guarded and postured. And so I play with different ways to talk about things that are really personal as well, that don't necessarily make you uncomfortable. It's not about uncomfortable.
Okay. Fantastic. So what does it take to put something like this together? Like, This is huge. I mean, you go into a small company, that's one thing. You're even doing this in trade shows where there are thousands of people.
Yes.
How do you put it together?
It's always collaborative. Most of these like really large public interventions. The immersive theater piece has always, in my experience, been done in collaboration with other designers. I have worked with 3 other designers most frequently until now. It's Birger Ebbe, he's in Iceland now. Norhan Hegazi, she's in Ottawa, Canada, and Jennifer McDougall. The 4 of us have worked on 4 installations together, and it takes us a course of 3 months at least minimum, 3 to 4 months minimum of like research. Creating working with the client to pitch ideas and concepts of what the theatrical like framework will be. What's the scaffolding? To then going into script, to artifact creation, like we create physical things for the future. We also create visual imagery and posters that trigger people to know, oh, okay, we're not in 2017. And so there's script writing, there's actors, there's training people, there's practicing, there's like, what do we need to make this space that we are going to recreate to be 50 years from today? What needs to go in here that lets people know just by cues and by looking at something like, oh, that's not normal. So all of that takes a few months of time. It's not like an instantaneous thing, especially because everything is so nuanced. If someone asks us anything, we can point to research. We can point to what extrapolation we made from this thing to come to this,
Right.
Okay.
Wow,
I love that.
Oh my goodness.
I love that.
It's fascinating. Oh, I have to come. I want to know what your next one is because I have to come. I have to come see this.
We're actually, so the theater piece is one, and I work with other designers and what I was telling you at the Gardner Museum, we're creating a fictional civilization that's going to be exhibited at a national museum. And we're going to be working with youth to help create the artifacts of this fictional civilization. So we do the foresight research about what are the constraints our society may face in the future. But then we actually make these constraints be part of a fictional civilization that's being unearthed as part of a development project. And so we're reframing our constraints. And I think one of the things that we do, as all of us do as foresight, and especially when we're working with complex issues, is how do we reframe things so that people aren't intimidated by something? And so you can position our future constraints in such a way that people see it as a past civilization's problems. And suddenly you're able to come up with solutions or ideas or creative ways to navigate them because you can distance yourself from them. That's what they suffered. Yeah, they could have done this, or that's a possibility. But sometimes when it's yourself, you're so overwhelmed or intimidated or nervous that you may not be able to engage in those concepts the same way. So part of our work is how do we reframe things in such a way that people are willing to engage in them?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So being a CPA and you're still licensed, you're still an active CPA, how does that come to play? How do you merge that into this fascinating work?
My license, I still have my license 10 years on. I actually did switch to active license, but exempt from CPE. So my 40 hours a year of CPE, I don't have to do at the moment. But I actually, for example, I'm on the board with the Association of Professional Futurists. I just joined, and I'm on the finance committee. So there's this element of keeping that part alive and contributing it in a different way to different initiatives that I work on. I was just on a board that worked on environmental education here in Toronto. And I was a finance chair. So I think I try to keep the finance piece more structurally alive with all the things outside. And in the projects, being an auditor is so much about process. It's about, does this make sense? The logic checks, and so as you both know, when you talk about the future, it's so easy for people to feel lost or like, oh, this is, to not be able to connect to it. And my role oftentimes in my teamwork is to be able to find those things that will just a small shift that makes something from implausible to possible, or that logic connection is, I think, something I do naturally as a result of being a trained auditor.
Okay.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yes. That makes sense.
Yeah. So you've brought it all come together. Right. And then look at things from the human behavior standpoint, and that's how I'm able to bring it all together. Because I again,
Right.
when I'm working with an organization, and I know the change is difficult, so what are the things that we can put in place? Understanding human behavior, understanding what's difficult. So you're right. Everything we have in life, it does play a role. So I think that's fascinating. I love that. So again, right now, the people that commission your work, are you working with the government as well as small companies? Where do you see the future? Where do you see your future going because futures is now becoming, I mean, at one time, I think even maybe 5-6 years ago, it was still, people shied away from it, but I think people want to see and know more. Where do you see the future of futures?
Oh, I mean, I think, like you just said, I think I hear the word futures like all over the place now. And I don't think it's just my filter bubbles of the internet. At least I don't think so. I just went to a university event at University of Toronto, and it was around Afrofuturism. So while the concept is being thrown around a lot, and there's a possibility that the way it's being thrown around isn't in line with how futurists may use it.
Yes.
But at least, when something's out there and it's being sort of circulated, there's an opportunity to have a conversation about it.
Right.
Yes.
So I see that being a really great thing for us, because we're at this really critical moment where we need to think about what are we investing in? What are the companies that we support by purchasing their products or services? Where are companies wanting to invest their own money in? With all aligned at the same time with people increasingly aware about the practice of futures work and foresight. And so for me, I think this is a really great time for us as practitioners to be able to take these conversations to the mainstream level, because we need a much more democratized conversation about futures and foresight work. It can't be siloed like it has been in the past in boardrooms and, government offices singularly or principally. And so I think I see
in
my
academia.
role. Yeah, for sure. With academia, no doubt.
Right, so it was siloed in all of these areas, and you're right, it wasn't mainstream, but there's a shift. There's a shift coming.
Right.
Yeah, and I think we have the ability to engage with more people. More people need to have a voice in what they want for their future as a society to be collectively, and I think we have the ability to direct that, because we have frameworks and we've been working in this space. So I think my work is about playing a role in that democratization of broader conversations, social cohesion, more opportunities for us to have shared conversations and shared frameworks around optimism. And what does that mean for all of us to make reality?
Right.
So like we were saying, like the future's coming no matter what. And I think the ability of playing with possible futures and possible future scenarios is that at least you can prepare for what might be a possibility, and just get thinking in the process. But it's coming whether you want it or not.
Right. So
And in the CPA world, can you give them that example? Because I know, because I've done some research, that whole financial industry, especially because of AI, is systematic. So it's almost like disappearing. So tell them a little bit more.
Yeah. So again, like you guys have said, I'm a CPA and I practice in a Big Four audit firm as well, amongst private companies, public companies. But audit as a practice, as a career, is at a very precipitous point. Given AI, given Internet of Things, given all these different ways that we can use technology to do a lot of things, audit as a field is facing its. It can see the possibility of it coming to an end, and the choice of audit and the whole field and all of us who are CPAs is to say, okay, if that's a possibility, what do we need to do to pivot? What do we need to get ahead of it? What do we need to do to change who we are? And I think our skill sets are so valuable to not be taken lightly. And so if that field is not going to be what it is, and you don't prep for it, then we actively walk into our own end. As
So it's not like, okay, so and this is what I think is so critical. So it's not just, this is going to come to an end, that's it, I'm not going to have a job. but what are the other possibilities? What else can this do?
Yeah.
Because I'm an auditor or because I'm a CPA, I think a certain way. How can I tweak that to look like what else can I audit? What else can I look at? What else can I, you see, and that's that to me is the fascinating part. So it's not about having a crisis because my job is going to be gone or they're not going to need me anymore, but what else can I do because of this skill set? That's right.
The end is a perception, like the end is also a beginning. And I think it's our job to sometimes not see the end as the end and be all, and then avoid it because it makes us have an existential crisis. That conversation about some entire sector no longer looking at all like what it does right now within a matter of just a couple decades at max, really requires, to be able to take a step into that really uncomfortable place. But also we can pivot. There are opportunities and that can be explored by scenarios. That's not the only way, but at least it gets you mentally psyched to be able to be open to having a conversation about other possibilities.
Right. It was, it's interesting. I look at this like Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus thought that what he saw was all that was there. He didn't realize that the world was round, but he was like, I'm going to go to the edge of that. And if I fall off the cliff, I fall off the cliff. But I want to see what's there. And that's basically what futures is. There's this horizon. There's so much more out there. You can't see it all. So whether you're a CPA or a doctor, or it doesn't matter what your career is, but to look beyond that and to say, I want to, if that's the case, I want to see more because there has to be something else out there.
Totally. It's the possibilities. And no one is saying that futurists or foresighters are I think one of the biggest misconceptions I feel I have, and maybe you can speak to this, is that we're crystal ball bearers. That's not what we do.
Oh my goodness. How many conferences, how many talks have I gotten up and I'll explain futures, and I'm like, and they're like, oh, how about, and I'm like, it's not a crystal ball.
But it is about a way of no right answer. It's no right answer. It's just prepping yourself for the possibilities.
Right. It's like a meteorologist. They'll tell you it's going to snow. The possibility of snow is such and such. But they can't guarantee that that blizzard is even going to happen.
But it allows you to be prepared if that contingency happens. I think part of my work is creating that scaffolding using design and art to be able to have a conversation. Just to have that conversation.
Right. To have the conversation and then to take that conversation and to develop,
for sure. To have strategies and
to develop the strategies for that change. I love it. Yes. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Okay. That's wonderful. I love it. Thank you so much. That's great. So Prateeksha, your next project is going to be when? It's going to be in Toronto when?
The next public project is being installed at the Gardner Museum in the first 2 weeks of August. So August 1st to August 16th or 17th at the Gardner Museum. And that's with Calla Lee, who's another foresight strategist. And that's the next public one. There's a possibility for a couple talks. But as you know, it's, all that's sort of announced slowly. So when that becomes public, I will definitely share. But there's a few things in the work for, the rest of 2018. Yeah.
So we would love to be there in August. And it's warm enough. It's still warm enough. Luckily, it's still warm enough because I know Canada can get really cold. So we look forward to that. We would love to be there. And I want to thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. This has been wonderful. I am an evangelist I call myself a futures evangelist, and I want this information to get to everyone. And this is the reason, this is the purpose of the show, because I feel that the more people hear it, the more they'll embrace it, and and I love what you do because you actually make them experience futures, which is wonderful. Yeah,
and I think we train people, right, as you do. Everywhere we go, we give people an opportunity to also learn about these frameworks. They're not just something I hold to myself. This is something you can use in your life, in your company, And it's just a really great way to learn to deal with uncertainty, which is like all around us, and ambiguity, which is again all around us.
Right.
And so I would love to have you guys here in August. And the value of our work is we can talk about really important issues in a really creative way.
Right.
Awesome.
Love it.
Well,
Okay,
email me. Make sure you
Yes.
email me all the
Yeah,
information. That way I can.
Right.
You know.
We'll make the arrangements so that we can be there.
That sounds
Okay.
amazing. Okay,
Yeah,
sounds lovely.
okay.
Thank you.
Prateeksha, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This is great. I am very, very excited about this. We definitely, as things emerge and you start doing more, we would love to have you back to share the experiences, because again, what we try to do is try to make it as comprehensive, not only comprehensive, but bringing these real life experiences to people and examples so that they can see where they fit in to futures.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So we will see you. We're talking to you soon. All right, guys. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and we'll be back next week with another futurist so that you can make more discoveries on how to position yourself for the future. All right, then. Until then, bye.
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 Thank you for listening to the Foresight Strategy Show. You can hear host Dr. Nilda, co-host Rachel with featured guests every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live or anytime on demand. Visit www.drnildaperez.com/show. For more information, sign up to our Foresight Strategies Insider newsletter, a $10 value for free at www.drnildaperez.com/newsletter.